Hello YouTubers out there, this is Jerry at the Movies, and today we're going to review. So today we're reviewing Room 237, which was released back in March of 2013, and this is a film that deals with people's theories and analysis of Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, which was released in 1980, and which will be now, as of next year, 34 years since the film came out. So it's close to getting to a 35th anniversary for Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Now, the film, this Room 237 is not a documentary. This is, as I said, it features mostly clips from The Shining and some other Kubrick films. And we hear voiceovers from a group of obsessed fans who have meticulously reconstructed this movie to the point that somebody discovered that during the sequence of the interview that starts the film, um, that the window that Jack Nicholson faces, but is in back of Stuart Altman, played by the late Barry Nelson, who is conducting the interview. He's the manager of this hotel, the Overlook Hotel. I mean, I'm sure most of you know the movie The Shining, so I'm not going to get into specifics there, but that the window in the back is impossible, that it couldn't possibly exist within the confines of this hotel because somebody's actually mapped out the entire Overlook Hotel. This is the kind of thing that this movie deals with. So the group of obsessed fans are a history professor named Jay Weiner, who does believe in this film having certain aspects or clues or subliminal clues. In fact, I think he even worked on a couple of books, or one book, and a documentary called something related to Kubrick theories or subliminal clues. Anyway, there's also a music blogger, and a few other people, and they discuss this film. We just hear their voiceovers, so they show just the clips. We never see who the people are, and they pause individual scenes or moments from The Shining and discuss subliminal messages, possibly alluding to one meaning or another. For example, Jay Weiner believes that The Shining is an examination of the Nazi Holocaust due to a German typewriter that Jack Torrance uses in the film, where you see the number 42. I think you see the number 42 on the typewriter, if I remember correctly, but nonetheless, it's a German typewriter. This is the one Jack Torrance uses. And the number 42 is emblazoned in one of Danny Lloyd's sports shirts. Now, what's the relevance of this number is that 1942 is the year when the final solution by the Nazi Party took shape. And it goes further. They allude to suitcases that dissolve to people and vice versa. And of course, the number of pages that that Wendy, played by Shelley Duvall, finds that says all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, and so on and so forth. So, like, if they were lists of people that are going to be either executed, Jewish people, during the Holocaust. Now, they show clips from Schindler's List during all this, which, again, this doesn't relate because, in 1980, only the book, I believe, existed of Schindler's List, certainly not the movie, which came out 13 years later. So, not to say that the Nazis did not have lists of people and so on and so forth, but I'm not really sure that proves that the film deals with the Nazi Holocaust in any subliminal manner. So, another fan sees the film as an examination of the genocide of Native Americans. This theory has credence because the Overlook Hotel in the film has Native American tapestries, framed artistic renderings of Native Americans in the hotel, the iconic shot in the film of the blood that gushes from the elevator certainly relates in some way to a certain kind of genocide. It symbolizes that most definitely. And the single line of dialogue in the film that mentions how the hotel was built on a Native American burial site, and how when the hotel was built in 1907, They had to repel Indian attacks during the construction of this hotel. So, yes, they built a hotel on a burial site, which they should never have done. Okay, so yeah, I would agree with that. Um, Another is the how the film opens with the spectacular aerial view of the Colorado woods from overhead, obviously, while we hear chanting and other ritualistic noises in the soundtrack that could come from a Native American tribe or tribes. Also, you must not forget the Calumet baking powder cans, which are in the food pantry in the kitchen of the Overlook Hotel. I don't think they were put there by accident. Uh, Um, although I'm skeptical that, as this one fan illustrates, that they deal with broken American Indian treaties, and then he gets into this whole thing about a peace pipe. I'm not really sure. I think that it's more than likely it evokes the ridicule of making Native Americans into an advertising icon, not unlike the Land O'Lakes butter, for example, or making it the name of a team, the Washington, what, which is the football team. Um, so we see what we want to see, of course. Also, what's left out in this film is that Jack Nicholson's death. Spoiler alert. That's why I'm talking about this, as if most of you have already seen The Shining. When he's frozen to death, the way he's sitting um, looks like a Native. It has a Native American sense to that. There's something distinctly Native American about that. So those theories I agree with. Then there are theories that run into the extreme and truly ridiculous. One fan posits that the film proves the moon landing was a hoax, the Apollo 11 mission, by the way, thanks to Danny Lloyd's sweater that in one shot reads Apollo 11. Interesting, but hogwash, because first of all, I'm not even sure when these rumors started, as some of you may or may not know. In fact, a fake documentary was made about this, that Stanley Kubrick directed the moon landing in the middle of Death Valley. But if that rumor existed while he shot The Shining, he might have been tickled pink by it and purposely had Danny wearing the sweater as a joke, which is possible because Mr. Kubrick did have a wry sense of humor. Um, that doesn't conclusively prove anything to me, the sweater, nor the fact that the key that opens room 237, that it says room in big bold letters on the key, right, the handle of the key, and N, and then a little O, and 11, or 237, sorry, and that the Earth is actually from the moon is a distance of 237, I believe, thousand or million miles, I think. When in fact it's actually a greater distance than that. But again, interesting, but not really proof. Kubrick had a sense of humor. People forget this. Um, Now, what's interesting is I saw an extra in the DVD, which was a 15-minute panel discussion with Jack Widener, who I just discussed was the history professor who initially didn't like The Shining, Leon Vitali, who was the at one time assistant to Stanley Kubrick, particularly during the making of The Shining, um, and also appeared in Eyes Wide Shut as the Red Cloak. Not to mention, he also appeared in Barry Lyndon. And then they have the director Mick Garris, who did the Shining remake, and the director of Room 237. But anyway, Leon Vitali said, "Listen, the sweater was knitted. The sweater for Danny Lloyd. It doesn't mean it had any particular relevance to the Apollo 11 mission." And then he says that in those days, Apollo 11 was discussed, and discussed and discussed. Now that's interesting because I don't know. I mean, I lived through the 70s, but I wasn't obviously around during the Apollo 11 mission when this happened, which was certainly historic. But why would Apollo 11, the mission, be discussed so much when they were shooting this movie, The Shining, at the Overlook? I don't know. But anyway, I'll take Leon Vitali's word to some extent over other people assuming things that may not be true. Now, moving right along, there's the truly extreme and ridiculous thing, which is that the hotel manager Stuart Ullman, in the opening interview scene, as he shakes hands with Jack Torrance, who he meets for the first time, that you can see that he has an erection, but the erection, that this is on Stuart Ullman, that the erection comes from reflection of the light, and it looks like an erection. Yeah, I suppose it does. Was it done intentionally? No, I don't. And I wouldn't even understand what the purpose of that is anyway. Then there's the fact someone illustrates that Barry Denon's character, who appears very briefly as Stewart's assistant, that somehow is indicative of a Native American type. He's just following orders that he, yeah, he works for the hotel. How come nobody brings up the fact, though, that, speaking of things that are not mentioned in the film, and there are a couple of others that I would like to bring up, that there, in the opening scene, when Jack Torrance arrives at the hotel, the woman at the hotel lobby, working behind the desk, she has a British accent. Okay, yeah, possible. In Colorado, somebody might have a British accent, of course. But when Jack then is directed by this hotel desk clerk to go to the office, where the office is for Stuart Ullman, he enters, and there's Stuart Ullman, and the woman next to him, who I imagine is a secretary or assistant or both, is also speaking in a British accent, wears the same type of uniform, which is like a pinkish type of uniform, and has the same color hair, which is almost orange or reddish, and speaks with a British accent. Now, how come nobody mentions that? I mean, that is just odd. I mean, two women, I mean, I guess, but odd. Okay, so let's leave out Barry Denon. I think that I'm not sure there's as much relevance, again, as they claim that there is. Now, the other thing is the supposed Minotaur from a poster of a skier. This one shot is when, early in the film, when Danny Lloyd is already in the game room. You know, he's checking things out, and he's throwing darts, and he sees the twins. And when you see the twins in that one shot in the background, you have to look closely, there's a poster of what looks like a skier. Now that's rather interesting, because if you know the story of The Shining, as Stuart Ullman explains, that the skiing season, there is none, because they closed down a hotel for 4 or 5 months, and that's why Jack Torrance and Wendy and they're all kind of hired to take care of the hotel, since nobody's there except them. So there is no skiing season. There's a 25-mile stretch of road, as he says, where it would be almost impossible to maintain it because they get 20 feet of snow. So that's interesting, but why is that there? I don't know. Now they think it somehow applies to a Minotaur. Now, what's interesting that I had forgotten is that Killer's Kiss, which was the second film, feature fiction film, I should say, because Kubrick started off making 2 documentaries in his career prior to making feature films, is that Killer's Kiss was a Minotaur production. But, are we just picking at straws here? I don't know. Interesting, but relevance, again, I don't really see it. I'm not going to say it was there by accident, because I don't believe Kubrick put things by accident. For example, the chair that disappears in back of Jack Torrance from shot to shot when he's at the typewriter telling Wendy, please get the hell out of here because you're intruding my space. Leon Vitali said, and I quote, that Kubrick didn't like that chair and says, get rid of it. So when he had numerous takes, which, as we all know, Kubrick shot many takes, he picked the ones that really worked, and he says, oh well, the chair's in the background, we'll have to deal with it. It's a continuity error. Because believe it or not, every director and editor works this way. There are always continuity errors. You're always going to find them. It's just the way it goes. So even if they get rid of the chair and they say, okay, you want to reshoot, and we reshoot and reshoot and reshoot, sometimes the best takes may be the ones where the damn stupid chair's in the back. It doesn't suggest the supernatural as people think. So let's leave that one out. Okay, and then the other one is the silly allusions to the Three Little Pigs combined with Nazi Germany propaganda films based on a dialogue bit improvised by Jack Nicholson. This was during the famous scene where he tears down a bathroom door with the axe. He says, little pigs, let me in." That was improvised by Jack. So a Nazi German illusion, a Nazi Germany illusion, no. Then the piece of the resistance is the fact that somebody, and I don't know how you do this, so, I mean, I don't deal with the latest technological video enhancements of video production or post-production, so I wouldn't know. But somebody managed to figure out a way to watch The Shining backwards and forwards at the same time, so that there's an overlay, essentially, of two different images. And that looks interesting, but again, what does that prove? I have no idea. I have nothing, really, because I'm not sure Stanley Kubrick watched that film backwards and forwards at the same time. There's some other ridiculous claims. Kubrick's face in the clouds during the opening aerial view. I don't think so. I don't see it. It's whatever. The film Room 237 is fascinating, but it can be tedious. But it's often fascinating, but just insane, some of these theories. But that's what makes it sort of fun to watch, and will lead many, I think, to look at The Shining again, a film that, not unlike other Kubrick films, continues to change each time one views it. What's missing from this documentary, I think, is an exploration of what is definitively in the film, and not just some wild theories, although some I do agree with. But again, these are not critical theories, they're more just assessments based on what it is that you think you see there subliminally that may relate in some way to the film when it may not. I wish somebody had mentioned the tiny little axe in a cup during the interview scene. If you watch that scene carefully, Stuart Ullman's desk, there's a cup on the left hand side with a little axe. Definitely foreshadowing for the events that happen later. And then the repeated line, which it makes the film even more eerie, "I want to be here forever and ever and ever," as Jack Torrance says to his son. And then the two girls say to Danny, the twins, "We want to play with you, Danny, forever and ever." That to me suggests that this cycle of violence, the history of violence, which I think is what Kubrick was trying to allude to in general, not specifically a Nazi Holocaust, more specifically the Native American, I guess you could say, genocides, is that it will repeat itself, and that these ghosts are egging on Jack Torrance, which they do in the film, and they come from the 1920s, and it's just this hotel's haunted forever. But it's more about the suggestion of violence, the suggestion that violence will just go on and on. This will happen at the hotel forever. And so it's interesting that the hotel does not burn down at the end of Kubrick's version, but it does in the book and in Mick Garris's version. So he left it like that, and I thought that made a lot of sense. But I see The Shining as the breaking down of marriage, family, and civilization through violence that repeats itself every generation. Others will see something different, but definitely check it out. Room 237. And this is Jerry the Movies with your host, Jerry Saravia, signing off.